So I will get into that. Ooh, that's gonna be a little down after you get to the initial.
Yeah.
And I will keep it moving.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not gonna interrupt you, but I will.
Of course. Yeah, I'm sure that you do.
Yeah. We're ready.
Hello? Okay, great. Ahlan wa sahlan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leila Soh, and I'm an organizer with Students for Justice in Palestine at New York University. I thank you all for coming to our event, and I thank our co-sponsors, Verso Books, Arab Students United at NYU, Columbia Students for Justice in Palestine, Mondo Weiss, Adala New York, Alauta New York, and Haymarket Books for the work they put into making this event possible. Before going further, I would like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, of elders past and present on which this event takes place. We have a collective responsibility to one another, to the speaker, and to the principles of academic freedom at this university to listen and participate respectfully in the exchange of ideas presented at this forum. And towards that end, the organizers have developed ground rules that we are certain everyone can respect. First, attempts to interrupt the speaker or repeated outbursts during their remarks or loud or disruptive behavior preventing the speakers from being heard are unacceptable. Intentionally obstructing the view of the speakers or the audience will not be permitted. No videography without prior permission from the organizers. Distribution of literature should not take place during the program. Please do not assist in enforcing these rules unless you have been assigned to do so by SJP organizers or Kimmel operations. Please know that if you cannot abide by these ground rules, you may be removed from the room by appropriate authorities. Now to introduce the event and our speakers. Our event today, Balfour and Palestine, A Legacy of Expulsion, takes place on the 98th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. This document resulted in the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine, with a total and deliberate disregard for the rights and interests of Arabs, which at the time numbered 92% of the population. From then, we've seen a sequence of events causing the current situation where Palestinians are forced to live undignified lives in their homeland, and families such as Dr. Ghada Karmi's and my own are forced into diaspora. If there's anything I've learned from Dr. Karmi and my own family members, it is the necessity to tell and retell our stories to show that we are not mere numbers, but people who deserve to be recognized for everything we've been through and everything we continue to go through. I just wish we all could do it as we could do so as beautifully as Dr. Karmi. Dr. Ghada Karmi is a well-known Palestinian writer and medical doctor from Jerusalem who lives in England. In 1949, she was forced to leave her home with her family as a result of Israel's creation. As a novelist, she has written several books about Palestinian history and her own experience as a refugee, including In Search of Fatima, A Palestinian Story, Married to Another Man, Israel's Dilemma in Palestine, and most recently, Return, A Palestinian Memoir, which can all be, they're being sold upstairs, and you can also, after the event, get your books signed. Dr. Philip Weiss is an American journalist and founder and co-editor of Mondo Weiss, an outlet that provides news and analysis available through the mainstream media regarding the struggle for Palestinian human rights. Today, he will do us the honor of serving as interlocutor. Without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Ghada Karmi and Mr. Philip Weiss.
This line? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Leila. This is a great honor to be here. I thank you all for coming. It's just I can't tell you how moving it is for me to serve as interlocutor to one of my teachers. I think that Dr. Karmi has been a teacher to many of the people in this room. I've read 2 or 3 of her books at this point that have had an enormous impact on me, and this one especially. I'll get to that in a moment. I just want to say the format of the evening is that we're going to be here for another hour and 15, hour and 20, hour and a half. We'll see. Sorry, louder. Oh, sorry. We'll be here for another hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half. I'm going to, the first part of the evening will be me engaging Ghada and asking her some questions. She will read from the book. And then subsequently, I want to turn it over to you all as soon as I can, to the extent that that you have questions. I think that engagement is everything on this question, and the more people who engage tonight, the better. I want to begin just with a short introduction to this book and to explain why this is such a beautiful and important book. I was at a liberal Zionist event, or a Zionist event not long ago, where a liberal Zionist said to, there were 4 Zionists on the stage talking about how they were defending Israel in this day and age and how hard it is. And the youngest of them said, you know, I recently had a debate with a Palestinian, and this man did not speak with an accent. He spoke in an American idiom of human rights and equal rights. In previous generations, Palestinians were seen as foreign. This is what we're up against. These people who are speaking in a very recognizable Western idiom, and not that should affect the cause, but inevitably these questions of manner and tone do affect the cause. And I think that what is so spectacular about this book is that Ghada has taken a form that is very familiar to people in this country, which is a memoir, and she has turned it to just a noble purpose. And when I think of memoir, the only reason I read memoir is to get some really hard human truth from someone else's experience. And it's very hard to convey just how many hard truths there are in this book, if you read this tale. This is someone who's, through no choice of her own, has been subject to some of the great historical events of the last 60 years or so, and is so alive to them, and also has maintained her sense of humor throughout. There comes a moment toward the end of the book where her sister says, Ghada has 2 siblings who have, I think, as you know, they were expelled from Jerusalem. They lost their house in Katamon in 1948. In April of 48, they left and went to Damascus, thinking that they would soon return. They were never been able to return. The New York Times is in that house in West Jerusalem. We'll get to that. There comes the family responds to this shattering in many different ways, and Ghada will tell us about that, I'm sure. But at one point, her sister says, reflecting on some event in the family, she says, "Oh, I pray that God may wreck their lives." It seems like Ghada was speaking of the Zionists. The book is filled with these kinds of strong outbursts and lessons and humor, and the miracle is that Ghada is not a vengeful spirit. There's actually a surprising degree, which we'll come to, a surprising degree of identification, even with the Jewish desire to be, or the Zionist desire to be in Jerusalem. You even extend your spirit to those people. So, I think, let me begin by asking you, why did you write this book?
Well, it's working.
Yeah, you're a little bit kind of close.
Right. Well, let me begin by thanking you for that amazing introduction. I just hope that people will agree when you read the book. Okay, why did I write it? Now, today, indeed, is the 98th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which you just heard about. And you might well ask, why are we talking about the Balfour Declaration? And of course, it is precisely relevant to the question of return, which is the subject of this book. Because, as I think everybody knows here, it was Balfour's declaration which established the foundation story of what became Israel. And what became Israel was responsible for the expulsion of the Palestinian people And after that, following on from that, their desire, their passion, their right to return. So that is the link with this event in 1917, which destroyed and wrecked the Palestinian people. Now, the question of why it's called return. Now, if people, I don't know how many, from where you're sitting, can you see the cover at all? The picture on the cover. But don't worry if you can't. What it's showing is open palms, like that, and across them is an old-fashioned key, a long old-fashioned key. I just matter of interest. Does anybody in this audience understand what that is? What is that image? Does anybody understand the significance of that image? Right, some people do. Well, the significance of it is, of course, that the key represents the actual keys, that when people were expelled, from their homeland, many of them took the front door keys because they didn't think they'd be away from one. And they said, well, we have to have the key because when we go back, we have to open the door. And as you know, they never went back, but they kept the key as a living memory of what had happened. And I assure you, there is not a Palestinian living who does not understand this picture, who does not understand its significance, and the whole thing has become iconic for the Palestinians. Now that really is a long response to your question, because I wanted to give the background to why return is such an important issue for the Palestinians. If you say return, the right to return, every Palestinian understands what you return. So this book is called Return, though it is not about how the refugees can all get up and go back. It's not, but it's about the theme of return. Return runs through the book, the theme of return, because it's so crucial, it's so fundamental to the Palestinian experience.
You know, one of the most beautiful images, this book has so many great images in it that crystallize Ghada's return to Palestine in 2005, 2006, 2007. And one of them is her memory of Fatima, a woman who worked for her family, lying on the veranda, the tiled veranda of the house in Fatima. And the book, in that connection, Ghada tries to grasp, she's trying to get back to this memory of childhood by returning to these actual places. And it involves her going to Katamon, to the house, and I want Ghada to tell us that story. And it also involves her trying to find Fatima, who lived in the village of Malinka, which is, I think, now where the zoo is in Jerusalem.
Yeah, the beautiful zoo.
And so, one of the most painful stories in the book is when you try to go find Fatima. But tell us, can you tell us about going back to your childhood home and the invitation that you received and what happened?
Okay, well, in a way, this is funny, although ultimately, of course, it's not. I received one day an email from an extremely unlikely source, namely the New York Times bureau chief in Jerusalem, and I was at that time, I was in the USA, saying to me, I've just finished your memoir, In Search of Fatima, and I realized that where I'm living, I think I'm living above your house, your old house. And he invites me to visit him to see if indeed it was the old house. So, most intrigued, I went, knew the date, and went, and yes, there he was, living in an apartment which had been built on the top of our house. Our house was a villa on one floor. They don't have 2 stories. But this had been built at some time, And the New York Times bought it in something like 1983, and its bureau chiefs have been living in it ever since. Now, this man, called Stephen Erlanger, at the time he was a bureau chief at the time, he invited me and said, I thought, first of all, to confirm this, for City House. And so, yes, I said to him, and he said, I'd like to take some photographs of you here. I'm sure I know that it's difficult for Palestinians to find people who allow them to kind of see their own houses. But he said there is a very nice Israeli family living in the house. They're friends of mine, and they would love for me to feel free to come and have a look. The thing about that was that, apart from being intrigued about this man inviting, I thought, actually, I have to put him on the spot. I have to ask him, having read the book, living above what was my own house, which I prefer, did he feel something about that? Was there something wrong with that? Did he think that this was cruel, that this was hurtful? Well, I can only tell you, when I was reading the book, he was absolutely evasive from the start. I said, well, now, you read the book, you see what's happening. You are here because I'm not here. You see what I mean? And what do you feel? What does it make you feel about Israel? And he said, well, it's just black and white and things are very difficult. What do you do wrong? The whole time. And I went back several times and said, look, do you actually think it is right, morally right, to throw people out and put yourselves in their place? What do you? I'm never going to say that. and but I think he felt badly because the sister I had, he took hundreds of photographs of me in his house, and I always felt that was his way of saying that I'm sorry, without saying.
Robert, I understand that sometime not long ago, you also had an interaction with the latest Jerusalem bureau chief of the New York Times, Jody Rudoran. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes, it wasn't long ago. She wrote a very ecstatic tweet about how lovely the house that she was living in was, and how happy she was to be there. So, of course, I tweeted saying, I hope you're enjoying living in stolen property. But I was now I expected her to be arrested or something. Actually, she wrote me a private communication. She said, I want to talk to you about this. I really wanted to talk to you about this. Please, if you're coming to Jerusalem, just let me know so we can sit down, meet, and talk. Now, explain that as you like, but that's actually where it was at.
So, are you planning to go to Jerusalem anytime soon?
Well, I really am due to visit, and if I do, I promise you I'm going to pick up on her work and find out what she has to say.
How painful is it for you to go to Fatima and see that house?
I've been a number of times, and the first time that I finally made it, which I described in the monthly In Search of Fatima, I found it extremely sad, extremely sad. And I remember standing there, it was the house, although, I am not remember. And to me, the thing that was so striking was the way that time was dead. We were dead. The people who we were at that time were dead. Fatima was dead. It was a very close feeling of extinction that actually not so much, that this was our house. I remember I played here, and this is the swing, and whatever. It was so much the feeling of having been wiped out, erased by a force that was way beyond us. The Zionist project, its determination to place its own people beyond us.
And I should emphasize that one of the this desire to return and get our property back, this desire that is widely shared among the exiled Palestinian population, is the reason that her father, at the end of his life, Rada's father lived to be over 100 and became quite famous in England. He moved to Amman just to be as close as he could to Palestine. And so this kind of hole in the soul of this family is a very big theme in the book. And I want to bring up an interchange in the book that I found extremely squeamish-making. Rada is very good at capturing these moments of interaction, as she did with Stephen Erlanger. And there's a moment where she is trying to find, it's very important for her to go find Fatima, this woman who was left to take care of the house when the family went to Damascus. And they said, oh, just take care of the house, visit, stay there. And then they never heard from Fatima again, this woman who had been so close to Rada as a girl. And so she's in this quest to find Fatima. And she's speaking to a friend of hers in England, a Jewish psychiatrist. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, you've got to get over this. And, it's the Jewish homeland too, and you just got to accept it. We're there now. I found that it was just such a shocking statement, because this is a psychiatrist who's supposed to be so sensitive to someone's feelings. But the politics, the tribal politics of the matter overwhelmed his sense of his sensitivity to the subject. And so, I'm sure I'm getting that wrong. Can you tell us a little about that interaction?
No, you're not right. This was a psychiatrist, really very remarkable man. I really liked him. And he had a lot of wisdom, where he had a lot of people, and he was a nice person. And he...
Not that nice.
I mean, he seemed very nice, but he knew that I was very involved in the question of Palestine and so on. And he said it, this is the thing that was a killer, he said it in the sense of somebody trying to make me feel better, trying to give me some peace of mind. So he said, look, let go, he said to me, just let go. We, he said, we came to this country, that's it. We had nothing. We came from Lithuania, we had nothing. I had no shoes, or shoes that I had holes in them. We were so poor. But slowly and surely, we built up our lives and we made good, and here I am, the psychiatrist. You see, this is how it happens. So you too must learn that you can do this, but only if you let go of the past. Like I didn't say to him, but you see, for me, the past is the present. The present is the past. I had no idea what I saw. So, yeah, it was quite memorable.
So when I began by saying that this book has such hard human truths in it, one of them, I think you touched on one of the most painful and important truths in the book, which is the degree to which Rada is trying to figure out how much the past is present. Is she wrong to live in this past? How much of that is present in her life? And part of that involves confronting the fact that just as this Jewish psychiatrist family came from Lithuania and they made their home in modern England, you are confronted by these very different Palestinian communities than the ones you had anticipated. There's a lot of comedy about the Palestinian Authority community in Ramallah, but you also are struck by some of the young Palestinians, the degree to which this narrative or this history is not so important to them. And so I want to, and part of the extension of spirit that you have in this book is to say, not that you would ever say something as insensitive as that psychiatrist that let things go, but tell me about those different communities and the ways that Palestinians communities have disappointed you, if they have, in terms of the holding on to this central, fundamental experience.
Yeah, you see, the problem is, we should recognize after is that Palestinian people, who were a cohesive single people living in their country. Because of Israel had been transformed into a fragmented series of communities all over the place. So you had the community under occupation, which is the one I joined in 2005 in Manama, and as you say, the rule by the Palestinian Story. And that was one experience.
Ghada was working, the book involves the sort of comic narrative of the book. Ghada is working on media, on getting out media relations to the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. So in 2005, 2006,
yeah.
2007.
Well, it's before Hamas was elected in 2006. Yes, I've gone out because of the return, I kept thinking surely there is a part of the problem return, it's a partial return, but it's a return somehow. So I went in 2005, working for the Palestinian Authority as this media consultant, and came across this community of Palestinians, the ones under occupation. And they were, people who live in the mother, living in the home. It's quite small. I joined them, and I promise you, if you have done the same, you will find yourself in a place which was virtually normal. Nice things happen, there were bistros and cafes and restaurants, you could have a lot of fun. And that was fine until you tried to get out of the car. So the moment you did that, you came upon an Israeli shepherd. And so on. So there was that moment. And then around our communities, Palestinians in Britain, Palestinians in the United States, Palestinians in other European countries, Palestinians in South America. Each of these communities has developed a kind of lifestyle. You can't blame them, I understand. You can't forever be sitting there hoping and moaning and crying and saying what you want to that. People have formed lives. Of course they do. Things, roots, new roots. Their children go to school. Their children are getting married. Very often to the people and the society they believe in. This is all entirely natural. Because the question for me was where exactly the Palestinian cause? Who's going to carry the Palestinian cause if we've been so divided from each other? And that, is of course Israel's purpose all along. And the tragedy is that it seemed to have largely succeeded.
I feel that we have to, part of our job in giving the audience your wisdom is that we have to get, we have to leave them with, give them something of your observations of the current politics of the occupation and of the conflict, things that aren't in this book. This is obviously a very important moment or this is an important moment in the life of the conflict. What is going on? What are we seeing over there right now? And how do you think these matters are going to develop in the near future?
Yeah, well, for a while in recent times, the Palestinian story seemed to disappear from the front pages. The reason, of course, is the Syrian crisis, the migration crisis in Europe, and all of that. That kind of edged the Palestinian story off the page. And one of the things I can't help saying, one of the things that I remember was in all the talk about refugees, Syrian refugees, and in all the new understanding of that there are such things as refugees and registered with UNHCR or not registered, all this stuff is started to learn. Not one mention of the Palestinian refugees. Isn't it striking? Not one. The oldest refugee community. However, it was not long before the Palestinians were back on the front, as is usually. And as you observe following, is that there are riots in Jerusalem which spread to parts of West Bank, they spread to Gaza. And these riots are destabilizing to the Israelis. They are alarmed by them. They react as usual with overwhelming force, which is not going to solve the problem. And I would forgive anybody for thinking, what the hell is this about? You know, are there where they're rioting and they're trying to keep order and it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Playing on both their houses.
Absolutely, and people really are fed up with it. But what's happened all along, only the recent events, and every other news event that has happened involving the Palestinians, and I'm sure you know this very well from the publication exhibition produced, there is never any context, there's never any history. Nobody understands how this happened, why it happened. It's just sort of, every time it's something, hits you in the face, oh no, not there again, not the same thing. But of course, it's clear what's happening here. No, it's not a mystery. The Palestinians cannot see any way out for themselves. This occupation by Israel has lasted for near 50 years. I mean, you've got to ask yourself, how much longer is this going to go on? And that's what the Palestinians feel. Is there ever any end to this? Now, it doesn't take a genius to see that if people have that sort of life experience, if they cannot see any way out, what do? Of course they get enraged. Of course they break out into fury and they attack their enemy, the enemy who's brought this on them. And the interesting thing about this is it's generally individual acts, not an organized campaign. Individual people, young men usually, who go out and attack an Israeli. And it's exactly what you expect from the situation like what I described, when you're fed up and your leadership doesn't do anything for you, there are no proper political movements around you that you can adhere to, what do you do? And so really that is the background of this. And the solution, of course, is very clear. It's not, as John Kerry and all these European leaders saying, oh, let us just fall calm. We urge both sides to control the situation and so on. Of course not, it's rubbish. The way you deal with it is by solving the roots of it, the cause, which nobody wants to. I mean, on the Western side, doesn't want to confront, which is Israel, and its behavior, and its suppression. That's what's wrong.
Ron, I think that, I don't want to you shouldn't sell your own efforts at consciousness raising short. And your books have been a great effort at that. And the storytelling here all brings people to an understanding of, the scenes, I have to say, the scenes from Qalqilia, from the village, and other scenes of occupation are just so painful. Surrounded by the wall, and the observations of people who are ingratiating themselves with the Israelis. Many of those observations throughout the book, people in the PA ingratiating themselves, individuals ingratiating themselves, and Ghada at once, at the same time, condemns this and exposes this, but also shows some sympathy for these people who are doing this. But I want to change the frame a little on this and ask, you're English, right? You're not?
Hardly.
You're hardly
Hardly,
English.
no.
Okay.
I'm but I'm concerned.
I see, okay. Well, I'm curious about your identity, and I'm also curious about, to the extent that you and I and many of the people in this room are engaged in the same enterprise, which is we live in the West, and we are trying to raise consciousness in the West, and your community, I should think, in England, includes a great number of Jews and Zionists. What are those interactions like? And are you gaining any type of encouragement from recent events? Do you have any faith that this context is actually being discovered by people in the West?
Do you mean in terms of cooperation with Jews, or do you mean in general?
I mean, your, well, I asked first about your social milieu. I don't know what that is in England. I'd like to know whether you've observed changes in just how people, I mean, there's that, again, there's that great scene where it's like, you know, forget about it, get over it. I mean, that's a grotesque interaction. But before we began this conversation, you showed me the letter in The Guardian signed by over 300 academics calling for academic boycott of Israel. I mean, it's, and you were offering this as, and obviously it's a landmark. We're seeing more and more support for BDS, and I'm wondering if you see that in your social media. If you can make it, not talk so much about the letter of The Guardian, but if you can do the job that you do in this book and make it real to us about whether you see these changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, of course I did most of my life in Europe, and I'm very familiar with European Union. Zionists and Zionists in Israel. For the first time, I honestly can tell you, for the first time in all the years that I've spent in England, I feel optimistic for the first time. And the reason is that there has been a sea change in popular opinion. I'm not talking about governments, I'm talking about people. The people of certainly England and Europe have become more conscious, more aware of the Palestinians as a wrong people, as a people who need justice, in a way that never happened before. Now, I personally think it was Gaza who's responsible for this. I really do, because the assault on Gaza by Israelis in 2008, and then the second one in 2014, had such an effect on people, so brutal, so big, and people felt totally sick. So yes, there really is a change, not just in those people, but in my milieu, which is obviously, you might say, as an academic senate, activists, etc. And there's a much better understanding of what's happening, but there's also a, how can I put it, this I think is the most concept, a kind of embarrassment of the Palestinians. Now, I never used to see that before, you go to talk about Palestine, and a load of Zionists thanking you and shouting and so on, very sure of themselves. Today, if you go in England, certainly go to talk about Palestine, if they're there, they never open their mouths. So to me, this is extremely significant. That they are on their own feet, and they are aware in some kind of dim way that they can't promote their message as they used to. And that's also extremely nice.
In both Marriage to Another Man and Return, you make it clear that you support one democratic state in Israel and Palestine, historic Palestine. And one of the great things about this book, I think, is that you don't say that this is not utopian, but you recognize what a difficult passage this is going to be. How do you feel about, can you say this in your own words? I'm paraphrasing you. Can you tell me what I've gotten wrong and right, and give us a sense of how far we are from, I mean, one of the painful moments in this book is when Ghada's father dies at 101 or 102 in a month. And this is a man of just, it's just a wonderful portrait of this man of great intellectual distinction and very fine mind, who's correcting his daughter even when you're in your 50s and 60s. She will come up with a point about she's in Amman and she's sort of irritated by some of the traditional forms of dress that she regards as the Islamization of a great culture. And she just comes back to the place, to her father's house, and she's just going off about what these women were wearing. And her father corrects her, or offers a greater degree of nuance and political understanding. We can actually, I'd like you to elaborate on that. I brought it up more to say, he's 102 and he dies, and his dream is unfulfilled. The thing that he gave his life to, of returning to this place that was so important to him, unfulfilled. And Radha says, will it be unfulfilled for me too? It's this painful question. And so I'm asking you two questions. Can you tell us about the one state answer and where we are on that? And then also, can you tell us a little about your father?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll say something about my father first, and then we'll talk about it. Yes, as you described very accurately, my father was a scholar, and he was very influential because he worked with the BBC Arabic service for many years. And he developed a literature program, which nobody was always probably has heard of, because he was in Arabic, and it went on weekly. And it was so popular that when he retired, the BBC retained him to continue doing this program. It was such a large audience. And he was very well known as a result of that. He had... Yes, his name was Ghada Karmi. And for us children, he was a very dominant figure, and we were fascinated by his ideas. And in fact, we needed them, we regurgitated them, we talked to them as if they are our own. And so, as you say quite clearly, that incident, which was extraordinary. I was in Amman, and it was Friday, people at mosques right now, took a walk, and I was just coming back. I saw this sight, and it was a man and a woman seated on two, in a couple of plastic chairs in the forecourt of a rather modest hotel. And it was hot, it was really hot. And the man was wearing a shashi, you know, having like a gown thing. And this was, we had pulled it out to kind of aerate him. I'm trying to put this down. And next to him was this woman, who was covered in black from head to foot. And she was so thick, the veil, I don't know how she was breathing. And I looked at her, and to me, it was so angry. I thought, have we come to this? Is this the great Arab dream, the Arab awakening, Arab nationalism? Is this what it is? And I went to her and I was in absolute fury. And I remember going in at the same time, as you say, venting my anger, saying, what is this? How are we going to defeat Israel with these men with beards and these women all covered up? How the hell are you going to do anything, succeed in anything like this? And I well remember he ticked me off. And I remember feeling, as I used to as a child, and he said, listen, you need to understand what this is about. And he said, you need to understand that the West is imperialist. It has conquered these lands. It has pillaged. It has stolen their resources. It has left the people with nothing, not even self-respect. They were forced to resort to the only thing they had left, Islam. And he said to me, and would you take that away from them too? And I really feel, say more about it. Now your question was
but before we get to that, just because I'm so relentlessly psychological and this work is so psychological, can you tell us how, in the book, you relate how each of the children, the 3 children of the family, you have a brother and a sister. Can you tell us how each of them has adjusted to this tremendous blow, which was the disintegration of their home and their expulsion? Each of them has chosen a different path. Can you tell us about those paths and how you, and there's a sense of the family being atomized, unlike Palestinian families traditionally were so integrated in the village and in generations, and here's a family that, in part, I guess, for a number of reasons, is somewhat atomized. There's pain and sadness. Can you tell us about each of your siblings?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, what 1948 did to us was that it smashed our society, smashed it to pieces, and you know, people really didn't understand that. As a result, the trauma of that was so profound, that the Palestinians themselves never talked about it, or when I talked about it, because they were so traumatized. In my view, for so long, they couldn't bear to integrate the past. And as you pointed out, the result, of course, the physical result was a fragmented, a smashing of the family unit, of the extended family, you know. And the sad thing for us was how we stayed, we used to say, you know, you get on with our parents, let's say, and we had nobody to turn to. So if you were unhappy with your parents for any reason, in our society, as it had been, we could have gone to our aunties, our uncles, our cousins. In England, there was nothing. There was just us, this small family, this nuclear family. Now, yes, it's a very good question. How did each of us react to this enormous trauma?
And tell us the ages they were when they left.
Yes, they were, my siblings were born older. My sister was the eldest one. She was about 17, I think. And my brother was about 12, 13. And when we came to England, we were so busy trying to adjust to the new atmosphere. But I couldn't speak English. My brother couldn't speak English. My sister could, she went to school, and my father did, obviously. But it was hopeless. I couldn't understand anything. We couldn't go to school, and it was miserable. I didn't know where I was supposed to eat, or where I was my classrooms, I didn't really imagine. Okay, so how did we deal with it? Well, you're right, we did that in our own different ways. My sister took the traditional path. She was very devoutly religious. She took herself off to Syria when she was in her 20s, and she joined my uncle's family. It was in Palestine, it was Arab, and it was an Arab society. And she married Philip Weiss and had 4 children and led a traditional life. My brother, who really was extremely disoriented, I think, went to work abroad as an engineer and ended up in Denmark because he met a woman, while abroad, was Danish, fell in love with her, and she, as it were, took him back with her to her country. But they ended up, me who, you can see, when you read the book, I've had a lot of difficulties, a lot of unhappiness, etc. But you see, in the end, my sister and her children came back to England. My brother and his wife came back to England. Each one was living in a different part of the country, so we were still friends. And I think we represent a microcosm, the macrocosmic reality of the way the Palestinian cohesive society, cohesive families were transformed into these atoms. And that is something which I so said at the beginning. My sister, that is the thing that really rankles with her. And that is why she said that day to me, why should we end up each one living here and there, without our own family with us, without when we die, we cannot be buried in our country, we cannot see the parents that saw their children, grandchildren in one place, you know, all this. And that is what she said, may God Almighty ruin their lives as they have ruined ours. And she wasn't a woman given to passion or oratory. You can see how terrible that was to hear them outraged in the anger.
Rhoda, excuse me, in the book, I should say, Rhoda says that people butcher her name, and this gave me a great deal of apprehension when I saw her today. And so she gave me the correct pronunciation. It's that R that people can roll off the top of their mouth for Ghada, right? So I'm sorry I got it wrong. I would like you to answer the question about one state, then I would like you to read a short portion of your book, and then I want to let the audience, which has been so passive and nice, and has been giving us such generous attention, I want them to turn on us, on you with questions.
I hope they won't turn on me. I'm very well, I'm very well to answer questions. Yeah, the one state, well, you know, that's something I've written about in articles many times, and my book narrative deals with it. Yeah, I mean, what I think is the ultimate future of this terrible situation, where it seems that there is only one. There is only one, which is that you don't partition Palestine, and you don't coup up Palestinians in a fifth of the country, and you give the Zionists 4/5 of the country. What kind of justice is that? What kind of solution is that? It's really hopeless. And don't forget the refugees which are talking about. Refugees are accused. These poor people, 5 to 6 million of them, stranded, suspended in these refugee camps. They're going to go home. How are they going to go home to a fifth of the original Palestinian community? It's just absurd. Therefore, what else is left? Well, what else is left is that the country has to remain one, and it's the homeland of the Palestinians, and the great Jews, people like refugees, people like me, that is our homeland. And there is a Israeli Jewish community living in that land. Now, we cannot do to them what they do to us. We do not aspire to extend them and forbid them to return as they do. As you see over here, then sure, let's sit together and let's have a democratic state. We don't want religious this and religious that, just as you might have in European countries, in European democracies, where irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your origin, you hold citizenship of that country and you are equal for it. That also is the only reform. And you know, it's funny, I have to say it to you, that when I first started writing about this, people were very hostile, they were nonsense, and this is impossible, Israeli people would be, you know, utopian.
When was that you first?
1991. The first article, no one was in the 90s, people started to think about nationalism. And then from 2000 onwards, the idea came up. And now, of course, it's in popular discourse, it's in peaceful discourse. It's not a very strange idea. But the reason I say it's funny how events change. You know, Israel and Palestine, whatever you want to call it, is one state today. It's one state. But it's all ruled by Israel, isn't it? The people under occupation, the people before 1967, all one state. The problem is that the one state is an apartheid state. It doesn't give non-Jews any rights, and it gives Jews rights. So this is the real situation, and our struggle has to be towards changing from an apartheid situation to a democracy. That is the kind of struggle that I would go on to.
So will you read a little from the book, and then will anyone who wants to ask a question or make a statement, we'd like to hear from you.
Well, you see, I mean, I hope, do people want to hear something from this book?
Yes.
Now, in this, as you can see, when there are two chapters in this book about Gaza, when I went to visit Gaza in 2005. And I was absolutely horrified. It was the most saddest place. It was tragic. I mean, there's no other words to describe it. And I looked around me and I saw the impoverishment, the way people were penned in, the difficulty in movement to get out and do anything. The Israeli army, of course, was inside Gaza at that time, and the way they controlled everything. And I remember one day, I thought, this is all man-made. This impoverishment, the miserable lives these people live, are deliberately created for them. And why? What have they done? Anyway, it was that one morning I was sitting in the hotel, and I got up. I thought I'd take a walk early before it got very hot. And I walked out of the hotel. The Israeli soldiers in their watchtowers were awake like me. And I wondered how they felt as they watched the people below living in such dilapidation and poverty, just a few miles from their own modern prosperous towns. Did they think those people wanted to live like that? For one mad moment, I wanted to shout at them, to come and talk to me, to drag them down from their watchtowers by their bulletproof vests and their guns and their walkie-talkies. I wanted to push my face up against theirs and shout, "Look around you, properly. These are human beings here, not beasts, not vermin. They want to live decent lives like you. Understand?" And you know, I was in such, you can see, I was in such agitation. I had to walk past the watchtower. I had to walk quickly and then I didn't feel the scene. So, as you see, I heard the people. This was this sort of feelings evoked in me. And what I very much wanted to convey as well, that the reader would see through my eyes, that I was seen as an outsider, actually. I'm not an outsider. And so the reader would be with me, also through these sights. And I would imagine feeling the same way as I did.
That was such a great performance, what you just read. As it was really enjoyable, and I mean, horrifying and enjoyable. I wonder. I feel that you won't be indulging our attention. You'll be entertaining that book. Do you mind reading the other passage that you selected, the one toward the end?
No, not at all. Because I always think that it's very good for people to get a feel for what the book is like. And I maybe we can do it in the book. Right, now, I found it was always the end of the book. I had seen what I saw, on one hand, the Palestinian Authority and these pretend guides, pretend president, pretend prime minister. When you know these are real. So that was very, very clear. And at the same time, juxtaposed against the terrible reality, the Qatar, which you mentioned, entirely closed in by the war, Gaza, which I was talking about. And I felt very bad, and I was obsessed by the idea of return. How will we return to this mess? For me, return was at the heart of the issue. Without it, the injustice that had blighted our lives for generations would never cease. I knew there were political practical difficulties in the way I would return, an aim that seemed ever more unattainable with the passage of time. But I was determined that Israel should never be allowed to get away with what it had done. Despite the resignation and defeatism of the Palestinian official stance and the indifference and cynicism I saw amongst many Palestinians around me, I never once doubted the rightness of my position, or that the crime committed against us in 1948 would somehow be redressed. I could not have lived with myself if I had thought differently. Such an injustice could not be allowed to stand for good. and the perpetrators who sooner or later had to give up their victims. The Palestinian refugee camps, which still stood after more than half a century, not one of them ever closed down, bore eloquent testimony to an unfinished business that would have to find its proper conclusion. And now, for the first time, my core belief in that sovereignty began to fade. I thought about the exiled Palestinian communities long settled in Britain, Europe, America, and elsewhere. They were well established, and although they still remained devoted to what they called the cause of Palestine, and many of their children too, they went on entrenching themselves ever more deeply in their countries. Many had found a workable accommodation for their commitment to the cause in the form of various activities of charitable works. These would be the modern Palestine, but it was a comfortable compromise. So it was satisfied with one's conscience and did not upset the tenor of everyday life. I could see the situation clearly. What cause did such exiles really? And how likely was it that any of them, so comfortably settled, would truly strive for the right of return? Could the refugees trapped in their camps, helpless and still dreaming of return, make anything happen? With those whose primary concern was not the right of return, but the struggle against Israel's occupation and had to end it? Had Israel kept us out of our homeland for so long that we were forced to make alternative lives and thus suspend indefinitely our right of return? And in such circumstances, would any of us ever go back? The thought was unendurable, even to contemplate simply.
So, well, that's it. I wonder if there's anyone in the audience who has anything to say, or anyone who has questions, please, now's the time. And Leila, should I give you this mic, or?
If you have any questions, if you can come line up over here, because the mic doesn't go that far. And if you can keep your questions and comments around 30 seconds.
Hi, Ghada. Thank you so much for your talk. I just was really struck by how you mentioned all these fragmented communities, right? I feel like in narratives of Palestine, we often overlook are these others, the refugees in different states as part of this disaster that's happened. And especially, I think, since the 1967 war, when this devastating loss, we don't see as much support for the Palestinian cause from different Arab countries. So I was wondering if maybe you could speak more on what our role is, or what the state of these communities is, and how we can support the narrative, and what that kind of means for the Palestinian community, Palestinian nationalism, if you want to say that there is one.
Yes, I think that's actually a really important question, because although it was a threat to you, there was a great disappointment or disillusion on that part, and I looked around and saw these Palestinian communities with really good lives, and had become sort of Americanized, Anglicized, or whatever, and I could see it as much. So your question is, what can we second do? What can your generation? I have to tell you, I think your generation is great. You can do a lot. And one of the things I noticed certainly in the media, which is amazing, is that the new generation is more passionate about Palestine than we were. It's quite amazing. And they, I think there's great hope with them. And as you know, here in the United States, we are really on campuses, where there's been a lot of support for the media, as we mentioned earlier. I think the way forward, there are many things you can do, many. You can first of all reconnect with the people that you have. You know, there are many things in many demands in refugee camps for help, for people coming to teach, for, you know, I think many young people who don't really know what the situation is can do something. They get summer assignments, go to the camps. 1. 2, they can actually go to the occupied camps. They can visit. They can see what it's like, what can be done, what it should be like. And engage with PBS. I mean, there are many different things you can do. And later on, you can write, you can educate, you can make your places heard.
I want to ask, I mean, currently in the events that are currently taking place in Jerusalem, you mentioned a bit about the desperation of young people. So unfortunately in the media, young people, whether or not they are actually guilty of any action, they are labeled as terrorists immediately. And also, unfortunately, the media is quick to sort of reuse the terms that are being framed by Israel. And so, how can this be overcome? I mean, obviously, this is very hurtful to the Palestinian cause, to be legitimizing in every sense. But how can this be overcome? First of all, the framing of any Palestinian resistance as illegitimate, and also that very use of the term terrorist.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Exactly. Look, this is really very difficult. It's a question that has come up again and again throughout my activist life. You know, how can we reverse the negative image that people have of the Palestinians? And you're quite right, the term terrorist has been very useful for the Zionists, which they have plastered onto the Palestinian way. You see, the problem is, remember that the Zionists' message, this message, which is so damaging to the Palestinians, is not something that the Zionists were able to pull off in a day and a night. This is the result of very hard, dedicated work on the part of the Zionists. They have a propaganda machine which they have built up, they have spent a lot of money on, and they maintain day and night. Where can we find parallel thing like this on our side? You can't even find something that's simpler in order to reverse these events. They're not that difficult to reverse, I assure you, if enough people are working and doing what they need, you know. And what I know, on my question, a very instructive incident which explains what I'm saying is, in London, I remember once complaining to a very well-known BBC not official, he was a presenter, and he was quite sympathetic. And I remember saying to him something like this: God sake, have you said this? You people, let me give you a very simple example, he said. When something happens that is an event in the Israel-Palestine, within minutes, our desks are flooded with briefings from the Zionists, so that when we do the program, we have already been told that this has happened. We rarely hear from the other side at all. And I really gave a very valuable bit of advice. He said, News is made before the news movies come out. Really, that is all the newspaper producers all get together in an editorial meeting. And at that point, they decide which interviews would be made prominent, which will be discussed. He said, now, if you would get those interviews to us in this editorial meeting, as it's happening, then they look at this and they will get this background that says the thing that the astronauts happened because it's happening. They said, we'll do it because we're lazy. Here it is in front of us and we use it. So you see, I'm giving an example of the kind of work which actually, I'm afraid, has not been done often. It has, you know, happened, but really not often.
No, I'm not that, I don't know as much about the history as I should, but at the time that the Balfour Declaration and when the Zionists came over, when the Zionists invaded Palestine, was there any offer to the Palestinians? Was there any financial offer or request that can we buy your land or a certain part of the land to produce it? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, there was, when the Zionists had come in, it was an immigrant, great waves of immigration. Some of the Zionists, or many of them actually, tried to buy land. They did try. Now, in most cases, they were rebuffed. Nobody was going to sell their land to these traders. But we did succeed in buying some land. And by 1948, something like they owned something like 6.4%, something like that. That was all that they owned after all those years of trying. As for anybody offering the Palestinian compensation, I think that's what you said. Well, what can I tell you? What a joke. Nobody then, nobody now, and these poor refugees, back to the refugees, not 1 cent in compensation for all that they lost in the and quite apart from people like me, exactly the same thing.
One thing I thought you really brought out from the beginning, especially the beginning of the presentation, was how the right of return is it's not like immigration policy, like Palestinians are not immigrants anyway, but it's not just like being able to cross the border, it's like reparations, right, for the land of stolen and stuff. Sorry, beginning, is that correct? Good. Sorry, am I talking too fast?
Yeah, could you repeat the,
Slower.
Okay, I'm sorry. So like one of the things that you were talking about, like in your story at the beginning, what I was thinking of is that the right of return is not just like being able to cross the border. It's like Palestinian refugees being allowed to cross the border in. It's actually having right, like reparations, like the land returned to them, or I guess like, equivalent compensation or something. And I think also like not returning to a terrorist environment, right, where they're going to come and be terrorized by the state, and right, that's not something that people want to return to, and that's not what the demand of return is. And then related to that is, given that that's what we're talking about when we say the right of return, is that something that through the pressure of BDS that we're going to be able to get, the United States to concede, or is that going to be something that's going to be on the chart and BDS the very end?
will BDS, the second part of the question was, will BDS bring about the right of return, or do you think that that's a cause for further struggle? And the first part, as I understood it, was to what degree is compensation and restoration of property, how much of that is when you speak of the right of return, how much do you accept that as part of the process?
Yeah, look, first of all, the question of the right of return is underpinned by international law. So it's not just people, who talk about it because they want to do it. There is a UN resolution which made it very clear that the people who have been displaced have to be repatriated and compensated. That's in the amendment. And indeed, that would be the right thing to do. The people would be allowed to return physically, and that losses would be compensated for. And where they have lost, they would be things would be restored if it was possible. But people recognize lots and lot has changed. And I've often said to people who say to me, when you say that, a lot of people say to you, oh yeah, but if you really look at it, if they had the right, very few people would actually go back. Now, in fact, there is some truth in that, because people like I've just described to you, the central communities in Europe, in the world and so on, might not opt to close down their lives, the ones that they've made, and go. But the issue here is not that. The issue is that they have the right to if they want. That's really what that's about. So, yeah, so now that's the BDS, yes. BDS is not, it's something whose aim is a bit, I think, it's to get Israel to abide by international law. So if you interpret that, you look at that, actually yes, because there is an international obligation for them to repatriate the Palestinians. So it's actually true, without being said.
I just want moderator's privilege here. We are in the real estate capital of the United States, and the world maybe, and people here know a lot about real estate. I want you to the extent that you are able to, can you tell me how much a house like yours in Katamon, how much that sells for now in Jerusalem? And can you tell us how much you have received of the value of that house, your family of that house that you let in April 1948? Because people here are very, New Yorkers, we can tell you what something is worth at 86 and New York. We can tell you what something is worth at Avenue C and Houston Street. We know. And I'm curious, and you also mentioned that person who built that beautiful house near you in Cotton Hall. What did he get for that house? What is that house worth? Do you know how much that is selling for? And how much has he received for it?
Yeah, very good question. I don't have those figures. I know that houses like ours are very, very highly prized in Israeli society. They consider them to be very antique,
Arab, they're called Arab houses, right?
They are called Arab houses, and people, it's not a prestige if you get on these houses. And I presume, I understand that they're very expensive. I can't honestly tell you how much it is in dollars, but they're very, now, of course, the issue is that we were never compensated, but not by 1 cent, not only when the properties were taken over, but certainly at the subsequently. But by the way, many Palestinians have money in the bank. All that money was just taken. The Israelis held themselves to it. Nobody has ever received any compensation for that.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Lynn.
First of all, I would like to say that I was very touched by you and by the way that you spoke and by the way that you presented about Palestinian cause. At several moments, I had tears in my eyes, and I'm sure that I wasn't the only one. Am I clear?
Yes.
You can hold the mic a little closer.
Okay. The second thing about the issue of Palestinians selling the land for the Zionist entity, I want to say that this is one of the most powerful propaganda that the Zionists were trying to distribute all over the world, that Palestinians sold us the land and left, which is a lie. Most Palestinians did not sell the land, and what the Zionists managed to buy, the land that they managed to buy was not owned by Palestinians. It was owned by aristocrats from different parts in the Arab world. For example, the Sarsan family in Lebanon, they own like huge pieces of land in Palestine and they didn't sell it to the Zionist movement. So I think that this is very important issue to clarify that it wasn't us who sold any land that was obtained by the Zionist entity.
Yes, that seems to be before them, you're right, absolutely
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Nobody should have the idea that the Palestinians went around, even that the minorities sold their land, you're right.
Yes, and
Absolutely land.
yes, and we did not flee Palestine. We were forced. To leave Palestine because sometimes when I speak with other Palestinians and Arabs, they say to me, "You left your homes." We did not leave by choice. Between 1947 and 1949, there were 117 massacres conducted against us Palestinians. That's why we were forced to leave. So, I think like expressions are very important. They hold meanings. They are not just the expressions. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but it's very provocative, speech. I was very, engaged with what you told us about the psychiatrists who told you just let it go. I had like I had some similar experiences like this. I had a therapist here in New York, and I was telling him how years I know that the Zionists are stealing our food. The home was collected for free, and they are making it theirs. So he told me that what's wrong with that? The Italians and the Americans share the pizza, and they don't fight over it.
So what did you say?
I was very angry at him, and he made me feel that it's my problem that I'm angry Palestinian. And I had another therapist. I had many therapists during my lifetime. Not now, however, but so another one. My parents they lived in Palestine in 1948, and I came to the US, to get more education. So, as a little girl, I was growing up in Palestine. My village is surrounded by Palestinian villages, whose owners were expelled in 1948. But for a while, we thought that it's a myth because we were not taught about it in schools. And our parents were afraid to speak about it. So we would ask who owns these homes, these homes, the fig trees, the olive trees. And my mom would say don't ask these questions because the walls have ears. Because at that time, we almost were still living under military occupation. So it was very hard to talk about it. So, however, I met one here in New York, I met a Palestinian whose father was expelled from his villages, from one of his villages. It's close to the border of Lebanon. And so I was telling my therapist about this experience, how despite everything that happens to us as Palestinians, how we get separated and we want to have this relation that we spoke about, but still we managed to meet there in New York. So I was telling my therapist about it, and he said that she said that that it's touching, that she thinks that it's something that is only a nostalgia. And I was also, of course, very upset, and I tried to explain to her that this is not like nostalgia, it's like a very factual, objective, moral, and political issue. And it's like, we are being asked to let go of the past, and we still insist that we are not going to let go of the past. unless we, we get what we need
Mm.
and what we deserve.
I think it's
Okay.
thank you. Very eloquent.
Well, I have one last point that I'd like to ask you about, and then we'll wrap it. Unless there's someone else, I don't want to. Oh, this gentleman would like to ask something.
I guess it's that for either of you. As we're going up into the presidential race, it's pretty noticeable that everybody running and most of our politicians all kind of agree on this pretty broadly on this issue, even as Democratic voters, for instance, are starting to shift on this issue. Democratic voters are starting to shift, but our politicians are not really responding to this. Even Bernie Sanders, the supposedly liberal person running in the Democratic Party, is pretty pro-Israel to a kind of astounding degree. I guess my question is how do we, since they're not really being responsive to us, how do we kind of shift our get our politicians to react to our own shifting opinions on this issue?
What a question. I wish I knew. I really, I've never seen a more servile response to Israel than I have seen in this country. It's absolutely disgusting. It's so bad. I think it's fascinating. One has to ask, what is this really all about? And I think it's so big, this problem, it's so big, that I'm not sure myself how it can be approached. Because it's absolutely really raised a really important issue, which is something that's bothered me for a long time. Why is the United States like this? Why are they so pro-Israeli? Why are they so, I've used the word so, they are. What is that about? Now, when we talk about this to people, they will tell you, oh, Israel serves the imperial purpose of the United States, that Israel is useful to the US, and that is why they get all this support from, as you say, from aspiring. Now, the other way to look at it, of course, is that the Zionists have bought out the American politicians while they pay them and make sure that they can continue their careers, or conversely can end their careers by what they do. You're not going to make any impact at all, you see, in something like that. There was a thought at one time that if the Arab side did the same, because after all, these conferences and how it seems to me is that they're just for sale. So if you from the other side put in a similar amount of money or greater amount of money, you'll buy their loyalty as well. Now, apart from the fact that it has not happened, it's not likely to happen, the reality is, the question is, why is this? Is it because the lobby, and I think Philip here can probably throw light on this, is it that the lobby is so powerful that it can be help this result, or is it that Israel is useful to the United States, and therefore the US cannot abandon Israel? Which is it? So it's a huge problem, and I couldn't possibly give an answer of how you can change your representatives' mind, except in the usual channels. You make representations, you write, you try to get the researchers, all that sort of thing, and you do stuff. I don't know what you think about this issue of support for Israel.
I think it'd be very selfish for me to get on my hobby horse right now. But just one statement in response is that this is why I, as a Jew, organize the American Jewish community. I'm very involved in the organizing of it. I think that that's very powerful. It's not just a coincidence that Bernie Sanders is, in his 70s and Jewish and was believed in the Zionist dream. I mean, he's progressive enough. I'll shut up. I think that this has been just one. I'm sorry. Did you have one?
On this issue, there is also a third candidate, the candidate of the Green Party.
Yes.
And she is
Stein.
straight like an Arab,
That's right.
very much BDS minded. So I
Well, I have some questions for the book signing, and time for people to speak for the Dr. Karmi once the list is complete with these statements, and then books will be available for sale right at the exit. If you want to join the site, just come right down the stairs.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, one more question.
I just wanted to say not to give up hope. That South Africa was one of the biggest allies of the United States, and it was a worldwide boycott, investment, and sanctions movement that forced the United States to change because of world public opinion. And I think that's what we have to rely on, and that's how we have to try to break the U.S. government. It's pressure from the whole world and from the U.S. population.
Brenda, did you have any last statement you wanted to make before you go and sell 50, 100, 200 copies of your book?
No, really, just to thank you for being such an interesting and responsible audience. And I hope very much that you will get the book and read it and enjoy it, if that's the right word. Thanks for your attention.